Philip, it's a pleasure having you on the show. There's quite a few areas I want to talk about. Obviously, we want to talk about Missive, but you've been very outspoken about bootstrapping as the primary means of company building, which in today's kind of like maybe Twitter world, everyone glorifies raising capital and going down the VC route, which is not bad by itself, but I find it's an interesting kind of like juxtaposition which you bring. We were talking about François before, the policy contact, that he's also of a similar mindset. So I'd be curious to hear you a little bit unpack your philosophy around bootstrapping.
Mhm. I think it's probably a consequence. The way I see how I run my business and how it impacts the decision I make every day in decision about raising money or not. It's mostly, I'd say, about like my geography and my family background, right? So it's always a lot synced with our own values. And in my case, my parents are quite not conservative politically, but in their life decisions, right? And so for me, the wild decision was to be an entrepreneur. But the things around being an entrepreneur, I like to control, right? And I wasn't really a fan of starting a company and putting its chance of success only in my ability to convince other people to put money in. So that was never really factored in. From the moment I started being an entrepreneur, I was always trying to expand my runway and be completely independent so I could be in control of that part, right? So I'm not necessarily philosophically against venture capital, whatnot. And I might actually take some further down the road, but it was more about being able to control, to have more control. Because being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of risk, right? Uh, and when you can control and if you raise money, the expectation goes pretty high quickly, right? So you kind of lose control over a lot of aspects of your company. So in my case, it was really more to be in sync with my own philosophy and values. But I'm not against venture capital. I understand what it brings to the table, and there's a lot of thing at Missive right now that we feel might be interesting at some point because the problems we have right now are not the same we had 5 years ago, right? Uh, so yeah, but up to that point was uh, mainly to be true to ourselves, right? We didn't feel it was something we wanted to do, and I'm not a good sales guy, right? And I feel to raise money, you first need to convince individual and people, and I was not really where I saw my advantage as an entrepreneur at first. So I was like, I'm not good. I won't be good at raising money. I won't be able to raise a lot of money. And so I prefer to gear toward another role and being more in control and focus on what I'm good at instead of, trying that role and failing. I know so many people that try to raise money and at the end of the day, they're not entrepreneurs. They're just trying to raise money, right? So
Yeah, like,
that's
yeah.
pretty much it.
A few good points maybe to unpack some of them. So you mentioned like the staying true to yourself. I think is kind of the very good lesson, right? So it's like knowing what you're good at, what you want to build. Also, in this notion of control, it's just multiple companies that you've built now using this method. So there's a lot of lessons. If you look at the clickbait articles of like raising funds and how to do it and like building VC type companies, but maybe less around what are lessons for entrepreneurs that want to bootstrap. So have you dissected any key insights or principles when you think about bootstrapping, all the companies that you built so far?
Yeah, so I've been doing, let's say, web businesses before they were called startup for a long time. Now I'm like 38 years old. I started doing money online when I was 14 years old, right? So built my first website was kind of uh, it was a French service called multimedia.fr, and it was just a website where you could host your own page like GeoCities, and it was like a repository of free games that you could download on Windows, put some ads in, and then kind of the spark to build my own kind of job just sparked from that moment when I was a teenage boy. And the fact is, to bootstrap, you need to have a spark internally, right? So you really need to be dedicated to what you want to do. And in my case, I never wanted to have a boss. It was just always clear. My parents always told me I was so independent minded. Always I kind of wanted to argue with them, always kind of want to go to my own road. And that was always part of my personality. And this just showed at first. Sorry, what was the question?
Principles behind bootstrapping, so lessons, things
Yeah,
that you can impart for other entrepreneurs.
independent mind, um, and having a strong sense of belief in yourself. In my case, I knew I could fail, but I strongly believe that I could fail until I finally succeed, right? And in one way to bootstrap is I didn't want to raise money and had only one chance, right? So that's why also I decided to bootstrap, because I personally had a strong belief that I could simply like make it, trying to make it so many times that it would at least work once. And I had a lot of failed projects before some worked at that scale. But yeah, having a strong belief in yourself, that would be one.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, maybe we can unpack a little bit, like, what you're doing at Missive, because that, from what I saw, it's like it's almost 7 years you've been building the company, and it's one
Yeah.
of these like I saw your post about that you're very public with your ARR having achieved $2 million of ARR, so like outward sign of success, but then also like 7 years of building and heads down, being able to do it. I imagine it was not always easy, and to your point of like having that internal drive, that motivation to keep doing it, right? But
Hmm.
at the same time, not having expectation from someone else. Like, hey, why aren't you guys growing 100% year over year,
Yeah.
but doing it your way? If you had to reflect back, would you have changed anything? Obviously, people make mistakes, but curious to hear about like past your past track record at Missive. If anything you would have changed, or for you feel bootstrapping was really the best approach right now.
I think was the best approach. I believe that if we had really nice opportunity to raise money, like we were approached only by tier C venture capitalists. We were approached, and I had a conversation with pretty high level people that even at the beginning of the company could see potential, right? We always decline, and obviously we don't know where we would be if we would have taken that road. Probably would be a bigger company now. Might have failed as well, but no, there's nothing I would change except maybe for the way how I personally manage my time, or how I took care of my health, or family or whatnot. There's a lot of time you're really focused in your company, and it's doesn't really change much if you go back home like 2 hours before or take care of yourself, right? So it's something now I kind of take less for granted as I get older, and I also have 4 kids. But yeah, it would be personal management that would change, but not necessarily bootstrapping, because at the end of the day, we're kind of successing and we are at the place we want to be. So
Yeah, amazing, man. Amazing, great answer. Like, I like the fact, yeah, you have to take care of yourself, right? What's the expression, right? Like, they always tell you to put on your oxygen mask first before you help on others, and it's
it's a
kind
good
of kind of
one.
important. Maybe it's a good
Yeah.
time to then unpack, like, explaining the idea. How'd you get the idea behind Missive? What it is?
Okay, so Missive pretty much is it's got think of it like multiplayer email, right? So usually an email client is a personal thing, right? You receive email, you can share those by forwarding a BCC or CCing emails, and then have conversation. In Missive, you technically have two types of communication: the internal, right? So the chat messages, and the external, the emails or the SMS or the Facebook Messenger message, right? So you have those two types of message, and they're all intertwined into conversation. So for instance, in Missive, you can do customer support, right? Because you can receive an email sent at your sales at company, support at company, and then you can collaborate with your team inside that conversation email thread with chat messages. So I could receive an email that says, hey, I have a question. And then me, as the person replying, ask a colleague, hey, can you help? Can you generate the quote? And then we can collaborate on that message and then create the best answer for the customer. But it's more than that, right? So we have internal conversation, we have external conversation, we mix them, but we can still have just personal email, we can still have internal conversation, and we can have the mix of both, right? So it's really a communication app. a communication dashboard for your business. And we're mostly focused on small to medium businesses because at some level, there's a set of expectation of features. Like you really need a help desk to do customer support, right? You really need advanced set of features to do sales. But for small and medium business, the philosophy of Missive, it can really be the dashboard of your business. And then there's a lot of SaaS right now, like ClickUp or Notion, or they kind of have the philosophy of this is the central place of your business. All the knowledge of your business is here. In our opinion, communication is the most important aspect of any businesses, right? Whether it's internal and external. So in our mind, Missive is really the core dashboard of your businesses. And from Missive, you interact with other services, right? That's our philosophy. That's our long-term goal. It's being more than just an email app. It's being more than just a chat app. It can become the dashboard of your business. But obviously, it's like SMB vision, right? It's not like, and that's why reason raising money. It's like, if you raise money, your tab per user needs to be higher, right? You need to go to a bigger customer. Like I don't see Nike with 30,000 employees using Missive. It doesn't make sense. The set of features is going to be completely different, right? I don't see a call center using Missive. I see small to medium business, like a trucking company, right? A lot of email, a lot of quotes, a lot of employees like trying to reply to emails, needs a lot of collaboration, needs automation, things like that. Oh, Missive is the perfect product. A small studio like developers, like you can integrate Missive with your GitHub, with your notification from servers and whatnot. And it a bit like Slack, right? But in that case, you also have your emails with customers. So instead of having multiple silos, just one place to look at.
Yeah, it's an inspiring mission. Like, and it's such a huge space, right? Like, people think that email is done, but like, it's such a wide and expansive space. Maybe, how did you get the idea? Like, how did it come up? Because obviously, I see you're a serial entrepreneur. You're building multiple businesses. How did you decide? Okay, this is point and shoot. This is the area I want to focus on.
Prior to Missive, I did other businesses. I went from doing a game jam festival in Quebec City called the Bivouac Urbain. Okay, so that game jam, I did want to create a game studio. So I wasn't a game developer. I was just studying in business management at university, and I was kind of, I don't really like it. They're just making it's just a pedigree to work at Procter and Gamble or whatnot, right? So I didn't really enjoy it. So I decided to create a game festival that was held outside. It was mainly to meet people to start a game studio. That was the idea. And then it got really big, had money from the government, and it was outside, had a lot of media attention, and like 200 more competitors creating game in 24 hours. And from that took a lot of time, a lot of my time for a few years. I had the spark to actually start working on my own thing. So I learned to code. I did already know how to code, but I kind of really focus on knowing how to be a good programmer and do advanced stuff. So I started to focus on myself. And the answer is long, but you'll see. I get to the point. But from that game festival, I learned how to code. And then my next question as an entrepreneur was like, I didn't meet game developer because I was too focusing on organizing an event, right? Like event organizer knows like it takes you soul, right? There's a lot of things, and you don't even have time to meet like the people at your event. It's just there's too much stuff going on. So I stopped doing that after 5 years, and in that time I learned how to code, and I wanted to have a project around coding and start a business around. SaaS was kind of getting hot. Like Y Combinator was something that you heard a lot more about. Like it was around 2011, right? So at that point, instead of doing a game festival, I decided to create a co-working space to meet other developers that could work at the co-working space. So I created a co-working space. And in that co-working space, now I did meet my future co-founders, right? So at the co-working space, I started working on a project called Conference Badge, which was an application to do name badges for event, right? So you see the affiliation with the first business. So at the event, at the game jam, we had to print name badges, and it sucked. So it became my next idea, and I started working on this, and then find my co-founder at the co-working space. And they were really, really good. So we kind of decided to go and create conferencebatch.com. And it was a wild success instantly, right? So after 2 months, already had a few $1,000s of orders, and then applied to Y Combinator. PG from Y Combinator personally replied. I was like, oh wow, Stripe graph looks amazing. And so we flew to San Francisco to get to the interview, and we were really bad and didn't work out. So we flew back, but at least it was a really nice experience, and we kind of had confidence of working more together. So we built that product for a year and a half. Like they were part time, I was full time, and we got more and more revenue. And at one point, it's like, oh, we break even. You don't have to do consulting anymore. Do you want to work with me full time on project? It's like we were all like, yes, that's amazing. But it was like, but I don't want to spend all my time on name badge. Like it's not like my life missions, right? Create a we don't necessarily we're not entrepreneur just to be entrepreneurs. Like the thing you work on are important as well. And so we said, okay, conference badge, what if we see it as a really simple product in a niche? It's a cash cow, it works well. We take it, and then we take our time to work on a wild idea that could take a long, long time and that we really enjoy doing. And Etienne, one of my co-founder, I had this idea of, what if we could just collaborate around writing an email like in a Google Doc, right? And that was just the first idea. So he started building a prototype during his free time, and then we tried it. It was like, that's kind of cool, but we actually need to build more than just a composer. We need to actually be able to receive email and then maybe collaborate and then start to comment in between those conversations. And it was like, that would actually be amazing to do the support for conference badge, right? Instead of using like Zendesk, which sucks really. So it's like maybe we can kind of create a really sleek email client where we can just chat around email. And then that was it. It was like, first, it has everything you want as a developer, right? It's complex. You have a live interface, you have chat. There's a lot of really interesting problems you need to solve. So as curious people, it was a problem that really kind of sparked something inside of us. So we said, okay, so we have that business conference badge. That's going to be our cash cow. And then we focus our time on that other business. Even if it takes 2-3 years, we're going to focus on it. And so we work pretty much like 95% of our time on this, while this was paying like our full salary, right? So in a way, we were lucky to have this, but everyone called us crazy, right? It was like, what are you doing? You have this, like grow this thing. You're stupid, right? You're really stupid. But we had a strong sense of belief that we don't have venture capital, but we have time. We have this that can help us bootstrap that, right? So, uh, and it's funny because you said, oh, you post like you're now at 2 million ARR revenue. And we did a post that went first on AccuNews. And a lot of the comments are like, well, they did not really bootstrap because they had that other business, right? And in a way, it's true, right? But the things we did is, and not a lot of people would do, is that have a successful business and then instantly decide to work on something else, right? That's the risk we took. And it paid off. But yeah. So the long answer to your question, where Missive come from, is that. So that's the real long answer.
Yeah, I love startup stories, man, and yours in particular. I find is really, I find is inspiring. There's multiple points, right? It's like one, you get called crazy, because it's like it made no sense to the Gmail works. Why are we working on another email app, right? Like, and at the same time, it's like, well, you kind of have to work on something that is counterintuitive for there to be a chance, right? So it's like, okay, well, why would we work on this? I imagine when you saw the a company like Superhuman have success and being, oh yeah, the email thing does actually work, right? Like there is still a lot of white space. I imagine it was a validation for the years of building, right? So curious, or is it something that maybe I'm off?
So at the point, I think Superhuman is 2018, if I'm not wrong. Maybe it's earlier, but at that point, we already have we weren't big, but we had really dedicated fan base in the sense of our user was really loving the product. So the moment we had really hardcore fan, so loving customer, it was clear for us that it was just a question of time. and marketing. And so we kind of learned to not be stressed by competitors, and yes, see them as a validation. And if you look at our space, our competitors, they all raised like crazy rounds in the last few years. Some of them tried to buy us. And at first, it was really stressful because you realize, okay, other people are kind of working on the same problem. Now they have hundreds of millions of dollars to succeed. But then at the end of the day, you keep having customer refer or customer that were at those company and they switch to your product and they're like, hey man, I was using that product and yours is so much better. And you're like, it's been like we've been at it for 6 years. They've been at it for 6 years with hundreds of millions, and we're still kind of have the people, they still prefer this to this, right? And that was the moment we said, okay, well, we're really onto something, right? Because we're able to compete. But that had a cost in the sense that we really focused only on the product. We never really focused on growth. We had no time. We only focused on making a great product. We were just three guys. So the only thing we did for like 6 years, it was customer support plus coding plus product development and circle. Like every day, every day, every day, no marketing, nothing. It was just like making our customer happy. And so our growth was word of mouth and some kind of SEO success, but not a lot. And that was it, right? And that's probably where we fail as a business entrepreneur. I mean, we have success, but in a way we also are failing because I think we could be way bigger if we add more of marketer mind. And that's what we're trying to change right now. It's being more focused on growth. If you go on Missive, like Missive/reviews, it's like a list of hundreds of comments and reviews, and it's always like amazing, amazing, great, amazing, amazing. And it's like, why are we still so small? Why is there's just 1,700 paying company using it, right? So really starting to focus more on growth. But I talk a lot, and I think I've even forgot the questions.
No, I think you answered perfectly, Philip. And I think, like, for me, there's a few interesting tidbits and insights that you shared. Like one, well, actually, I'll refer to a post that you put on your blog, right? Like what we did not do, like all this list of things. We didn't do marketing. We didn't do this. Like we didn't raise money. All these things, and then, but you kind of mentioned what you did do, right? Which wasn't clear in the post of like just this, radical obsession on the customer, the product, and you're at the point now where the product is obviously at a very high level, where you're able to compete with these companies that have many more resources, but people don't know, right? Like a customer doesn't necessarily go on your LinkedIn, oh, there are only three guys versus like VC funded company. They just care about the product, right? So that's really the essence of any company, really. It's like, is the product there? And so, yeah, maybe to your point that you mentioned previously, never say never about funding. Well, now you're at the point where the product is solid, consideration of hiring a marketer, doing more, if of course your goal is to grow, right? But it seems like you hit on some kind of secret magic trick, right? If people really like your tool.
Yeah. So, but we always felt for the last 4 years that we were at a point where we might do things differently, and we didn't. And so I'm still at that. I still have that feeling. Will in a year be so different? I don't know, but the feeling of having to do things differently keeps growing. Obviously, we have more customers. We have more and more time focused on customer support, and we will have to grow at some point. Just at least to be able to still develop the product, right? Because right now it's just three people doing the support, and we're at 2 million ARR, so there's still a lot of customers, right? So. But the cool thing with a product like Missive is that customer support is pretty much just for onboarding, and then people are kind of on their own. So if we onboard the same number of customers, that's not a problem. But as you do more marketing, as I'm trying to do, there's more people you onboard, and then now the support is exponential as well. So we will have to kind of grow the headcount at least. Yeah.
Yeah. How early are we in the space? Like, there's so many collaboration tools. Obviously, email's been
Mhm.
around, but it's still the dominant feature, right? Like, still people use it. So it's like, it's not like a finished thing. Email can always get better. It's software. So curious to hear about like maybe more on the innovation roadmap, where your headspace is at, like crazy wild ideas that you guys are talking about internally of like, how do we make this space better?
Good question. I would say, like I said initially in the conversation, we say email client, but really it should be kind of message client in the sense that yes, you can have emails, but you can also have SMS. You can also have, an email client is kind of is a set of tools to deal with message. So whatever is the protocol behind, Missive is already built for it for those, right? So we can insert different protocols in. And our philosophy is to have a centralized set of tools to manage different protocols. And it's pretty much it. Being a communication app. And I think it's not possible for Slack because it's an internal chat tool. You're missing half of the conversation. So yes, Slack is really good, and I'm not trying to move all of our customers to Missive and have all their internal conversation in Missive. But if you want the most value, that's what you need to do: is merge those two worlds, right? Both the internal and external in one place. There's no more silos. So as my vision changed for the last 6 years, no, it was always that, right? It was always like having that centralized place for communication. And when you taste that, it's really powerful, right? And if we were closing Missive tomorrow, we would probably keep running the server just for us, right? Because it's like there's no way I'm going back into copy pasting email in Slack or forwarding things or whatnot, right? So having those two worlds together is really powerful. And there's not a lot of startup doing that, right? Through the years, there was a lot of, trying to make emails more like SMS or trying to switch, different gimmicks around emails. But having an app that respects emails, that respects how emails is done, that is powerful and good for emails, but bring something more. There's not a lot of those out there. So uh, I think in that way, we're kind of different from a lot of the, let's say superhuman or whatnot. And, for instance, superhuman, when I saw them release, I was like, okay, in 2 years, they're going to do like us. It's like, how can you be a productivity app for business executive without them having their assistant in? I mean, you need to bring the assistant in, right? It's not just shortcuts. You need to bring other of their team in because the value and the productivity for those high level people is their team. They need to have their team in their emails. So it's like, it's a question of time. In a year or two, they're going to be exactly like Missive, but they didn't, and I don't know why. They have they have their philosophy, but it's just proven how I'm obsessed with what we're doing. I'm always thinking like the other they're going to do it like us because it just makes so much sense.
I don't bet against entrepreneurs that are focused right on one thing. And like I won't speak negatively about Superhuman, but it feels like they're doing a lot of things versus like focusing on the core mission. So like, yeah, hats off. And I think it's always a good sign also when you said, if we shut this down, I'm still using the product. I love the product, right? This notion of eating your own dog food. It seems like you guys really live by that philosophy.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Philip, I can probably pick your brain for another hour, learning tips and tricks. This has been great, man. Honestly, great conversation. Continued success to what you guys are doing. Final question: if people want to learn more, sign up, use Missive. What's the best way?
Well, you go to our website. You can try it for free with like two colleagues. So you can create a small organization, import an email account, and just play with it for free. And if you want to follow more about the business, you can follow Missive on LinkedIn, Twitter, or my personal account as well. I recently switched kind of the follower model on LinkedIn. I don't even know what it means, but you can follow me. I'm trying to share more. I hate to say advice because I'm not so adviseful, but I try to share more. Seems to be a good way to market myself and my product. But
from my perspective, you have bunch of great advice. I've learned a lot today, man. So I just want to thank you.
Amazing. Thanks a lot for the conversation. It was great.